Let's get started. So we are continuing on our study on the book of Revelation. We're now in chapter 3 with the letter to the church of Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia was only one of 2 churches that did not receive a rebuke from Yeshua, the other one being Smyrna. They received a lot of praise and a lot of encouragement, however. Philadelphia was not as old as some of the other cities in Asia Minor. Its origins dated back to the 2nd century BCE. Because of its location, though, it became a very strategic for commerce and for trade. It was considered the open door to the east. Now, what do I mean by that? Philadelphia sat on the eastern border of the Roman territory, okay? And when you entered into Philadelphia and you went beyond on the Roman road into the east, you were basically headed toward Assyria, because this is where those roads led to. So, and the Greeks themselves actually formed Philadelphia as a missionary city for Greek culture, because it was the last outpost of Greek civilization, Greek culture, and the people of Greece actually considered it their duty to export their civilization and culture beyond their borders. The name Philadelphia is a compound of 2 Greek words, Philos, which means beloved or dear, and Adelphos, which means brother or brotherly, and it means love for a brother, or the city of brotherly love, or beloved brother. King, I think it's Eumenes is how you pronounce it, the second, built and named this city, Philadelphia, because of the great love that he had for his brother, King Attalus II, who was also a fellow king of Pergamum. Philadelphia is now El Shahir, a municipality in Manisa province of Turkey. Because the area was prone to severe earthquakes, there are very few structures left of this ancient city. And the town is actually built on top of the ruins of the ancient city of Philadelphia. However, in its day, it was a very luxurious city, so much so that Strabo, the ancient Roman historian, called it the Little Athens. However, Philadelphia was in a region that suffered terrible earthquakes, and in fact, the city was decimated after the earthquake that happened in 17 CE. It would not have survived had Tiberius not granted it tax relief for 5 years, helped rebuild it, and then after that 5 years, he reinstituted a heavy tax on the people to continue the rebuilding of the city. And because of this heavy taxation, the people in Philadelphia were actually very poor. However, because of Tiberius's great generosity, they soon minted coins with his images on it and built a temple to him. However, cult temple worship was not only for Tiberius, but for Dionysus, which was the god that this particular region worshipped. It was the Roman god Bacchus, and we know him for his, Bacchus is for revelry, wine drinking, and all manners of partying. Debauchery. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. However, because even after it's rebuilt, they're still having earthquakes, just one right after the other. So the citizens actually move outside of the city because they're afraid if the earthquakes hit, they're going to be killed by the buildings falling down on them. And this is another reason that the people were probably poor. You know, they were having to live outside of the city. And because of this rural nature of the people, The opportunities for missionary work with the church was really, there's a large amount of missionary work that could be done, not only among the people of Philadelphia, but because they lived in this border town, they had the opportunity to do missionary work in the east as well. So they were able to go outside of the Roman province and spread the message of Yeshua. To the angel of Messiah's community in Philadelphia write, thus says the Holy One, the true One, who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, and who shuts and no one will open. I want to cover two words here, angel and church. And I know that we've already covered this in a previous lesson, but I want to recap a little bit because there is some additional information that I've actually come across, which I found really interesting. So the word angel is angelos, which is a human messenger or an angel, but it's one sent on a special mission, one dispatched to perform a specific assignment, a delegate or a dignitary, and it brings to mind the picture of a pastor or messenger of God. This letter is addressed, just like all of the letters are addressed, to the delegate or the pastor or the leader over the churches. This one, of course, is to Philadelphia. Our pastor, Pastor Chuck, he's our angelos. Yes, he's our angel over our congregation. Yeah.
Held to a high standard.
See, the pastors...
Somebody clip a wing.
Our pastors everywhere, they have a duty to discern and teach what message God has given them to deliver to us.
Yes.
And this is what these messengers are doing here in these letters. But it doesn't just stop at our pastor. We also have a duty not only for us to pray for him, but for his wife, his family, because there's a lot of work that Tammy does, you know, as a pastor's wife. There's a lot that she's involved in. And we have a responsibility to pray for them, to strengthen them, to encourage them as they continue their walk. So it's kind of a give and take deal. You know, we have to pray for their protection and their function in the body, just as they pray and work with us for our protection and function in the body.
And there's enemies that attack the whole family because of the job that Brother Chuck holds.
Yes, that's very true.
So even if Tammy didn't do anything, she has attacks just because of Brother Chuck's calling.
Yes.
And his whole household.
Well, it is all my fault.
No, it's all God's fault. He's one told you to do it.
So, the Tree of Life version says, to the angel of Messiah's community in Philadelphia, but most translations say to the angel of the church in Philadelphia, or the church in Laodicea or Smyrna or wherever. This word church has a much deeper meaning than I have discussed before, and I think it's something that we need to revisit because it really does give a different light on why there was so much persecution against the church. The word church is translated from the word ecclesia. Now, when Christianity was coming about, there was no Christian vocabulary. There was no Christian jargon. Some things had to have new words, and these words were borrowed from other sources. The word church was officially, this word ecclesia, was a very pagan and political word. The fact that the writers of these letters used this word placed them and the believers in a lot of jeopardy with the Roman government. I'm about to tell you why. This word is made up of the prefix ek, which means out of or from, and the root word kaleo, which means to call. Now this seems harmless enough, right?
Yeah.
It means to call out. from. But where was this word first used pre-church? And that's where it took its meaning from. And it was in Athens, and it was a political term. An ecclesia was a called out, separated assembly. It was a prestigious assembly of distinguished citizens who determined laws, who debated public policy, who formulated new policies, who argued and ruled in judicial matters, elected chief magistrates, and decided who should be banished. This was an assembly of about 6,000 men that were specially elected to these duties. They met on a hill near the Acropolis, and they met 3 to 4 times a month. But not only were they responsible for these items here, they were responsible for declaring war and military strategy. The Greeks never used this word for a religious gathering. So if you're a Roman official living during this time, this use of this word does not give you the sense of this benign assembly of believers.
Right.
Okay? They could actually construe it as some kind of political uprising, which may be one of the reasons why Rome was so against the faith. It may also be a part of the reason, I'm not saying the whole reason, but part of the reason why the Jewish leaders wanted to separate themselves from this sect of Judaism, okay, to sever their connections to it, because they had enough troubles of their own with Rome, right? They had been given special dispensation for their faith, okay, but they weren't given special dispensation for political matters. So when they see this word ecclesia being used for the believers, this is a political landmine for them. They've got their zealots and they've got their rebels. They're already fighting all of these people already. You know, there's already this turmoil, and to add this into the mix was just the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
So
Why would they use the word if they knew it was going to do this?
I have no idea.
Well, at the time of the disciples, why would they be using this anyway? Because they wouldn't be speaking Greek; they would be speaking Hebrew.
Well, Greek was the language.
Well, in the Hebrew, we think they was cussing.
Do what now?
If we use the Hebrew word there, we would think that they was cussing.
Okay.
Because it's a hell.
Okay.
All hell.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny.
Because they're in a Greek, I mean, if you think about it, they're in a Hellenistic culture. The Romans venerated the Greeks. They wanted to be like the Greeks, okay? Much of the Jewish communities were Hellenized. They spoke Greek.
Coin Greek.
You know, that Koine Greek. So,
Which means common.
yes.
Okay.
So,
Koine is a common Greek language.
Okay.
and so there is a need for a Greek word. Why they use this, I don't know, unless it's the thought of the assembly of making rules or whatever within the body. I have no idea. But the long-term repercussions of what this word means, I think, set them at odds with Rome and at odds with the Jewish community. That's what I think. Thus says the Holy One, the true one, who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, and who shuts and no one will open.
I love that verse.
This harkens back to Isaiah 22, 20 through 22. It says, in that day I will summon my servant Eliakim, son of Hilkiah. I will clothe him in your robe and fasten your sash on him. I will give your authority into his hands, so he will be a father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. I will set the key of the house of David upon his shoulder. What he opens, no one can shut. What he shuts, and no one can open. Eliakim means God raises up or God establishes. Now this is a near and far prophecy. We've talked about near and far prophecies. This verse is seen as messianic in context. Yes, it applied to this particular era, but it was also considered a messianic verse. And we can compare this to another messianic verse in Isaiah 9, 6 through 7. For a child is born to us, a son is given to us. Dominion will rest on his shoulders, and he will be given the name Pele Yoetz, El Gabor, Aviad, Sar Shalom. Wonder of a counselor, mighty God, Father of eternity, Prince of peace, in order to extend the dominion and perpetuate the peace of the throne and kingdom of David, to secure it and sustain it through justice and righteousness henceforth and forever. The zeal of Adonai Zebaoth will accomplish this. So the key of the house of David represents God's governance. The key on Eliakim's shoulder represents the power of the government that would ultimately rest on Messiah's shoulder. Messiah comes from the Davidic line, and he will sit on the throne when he returns and establishes his earthly kingdom. So verse 7 of Revelation is Yeshua establishing his messianic and God-given authority over the body of believers in Philadelphia and, of course, elsewhere. I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. This open door concept reminds the Philadelphians of their city's original mission, which was spreading the Greek culture to the nations. But now this assembly of believers is tasked with taking the gospel through this open door, that is the road to the east, that God has placed before them, and spreading the salvation message to the nations. And according to Yeshua's words, they have done this, they are keeping his word, and they are doing a beautiful job of it. I know you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and not denied my name. So Yeshua's words reminded me of the Apostle Peter and how he denied Yeshua 3 times. When the chips were down, Peter didn't rely on the strength of God to soldier through. He had no strength of his own to stand up, and fear drove him to deny his Messiah. It's real easy to allow fear to compromise our stand as the people of God. You know, maybe it's something really innocuous. You know, maybe we don't speak up when we receive that nudge from the Holy Spirit to say something, or perhaps we loosen up around coworkers or friends, and or even just by our actions we deny him. It's real easy to do. And this verse from 1 John 3:18 can apply not just to those around us, but to what God is speaking to us as well, and how we act towards him. Children, let us love not with words and talk, but with actions and in reality. Our actions speak louder than our words. This verse here, where he says, you have kept my word, you have not denied my name, shows that God sees us where we're at. He sees what resources we have and how we're using them. It's like the parable of the talents. You know, some people get 10 talents, some people get 5, some people get 1. What are we doing with the talents or the gifts and the resources that God has given us? And so he knows our strengths and he knows our weaknesses, and we just have to keep walking in obedience, continuing to try to walk in obedience throughout this whole life by keeping his word and not denying him. I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews though they are not, but are liars, I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. Now I went back to the Hebrew book of Revelation, and it was translated just a little bit different. I, Yeshua, give notice to the assembly of Satan, those who say they are Yehudim, people of Yehovah, but are not, because they are liars. Behold, I, Yeshua, will make them come in supplication, and they will bow at your, Jehovah's feet, and know that I, Yeshua, myself have loved you. So we have in our normal English translations this idea that these people who are liars and blasphemers against the congregation are going to come to them and bow at their feet in supplication. But the Hebrew book of Revelation seems to indicate that Yeshua will direct their worship to God, and they will bow at his feet, and that they will see that he has loved the Father. And these people, these Yehudim that Yeshua is talking about, suggest that there's some of these messianics that are bowing to the authority of the rabbi with their commandments of men, and rather than following Scripture. But either way, I can get something out of either way that it's translated. But I just found this to be interesting because it gives a little bit of a different perspective, and I wanted to share that. Since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. Again, this is the way it's translated in the Hebrew book of Revelation. Since you have kept the gift of my word, therefore I will keep you from the hour of temptation, which will come upon all the inhabitants of the land, to test all those who dwell in the earth. Despite the Crusades, despite the rise and fall of empires, both Muslim and Catholic, and Western and Eastern and everything else during the first part through the 10th and 11th centuries, Philadelphia was able to remain independent of everything that was going on. It was able to remain a neutral city. And it remained so until 1390, when it was finally taken over by the Ottoman Empire. So this promise to them that they would continue to keep the path for God lasted for a long, long time. It was a promise that lasted for centuries. So the Church of Philadelphia was able to face fewer what they call syncretism problems, and that is the practice of combining different beliefs and practices and merging them into one belief system, like the Catholics did with the pagan system and Christianity. And they were able to do this to avoid all this because there were fewer major pagan temples in the area. So their faith was able to remain what I would call pure. It wasn't adulterated with pagan beliefs and everything else. The Church of Philadelphia was faithful to God's instructions even when faced with the pressures from around to abandon them. In the first part of the 2nd century, Ignatius, who was the bishop of Antioch, on his way to Rome to his death, he wrote them a letter to encourage them to continue to remain united and to listen to their bishop. So even to the 2nd century, their obedience to the word, the unity of their congregation was still very well known and established. And despite the Crusades and the rise and fall of empires, well, I already did said that. Okay, never mind. I messed up and didn't. I already told you that. Yeah.
I just trying to figure out who that was in that funny hat.
That was the Ottoman ruler that eventually took over that area of the world. I can't remember his name. I'm coming soon. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take your crown. The one who is victorious, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never again will they leave it. I will write on them the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God, and I will also write on them my new name. Now we're going to get crowns in heaven, okay? And there's multiple crowns that the Bible talks about. One is the imperishable crown, which we see in 1 Corinthians 9, 24 through 25. And it says, don't you know that in a race all the runners compete, but only one wins the prize? So then run to win. Now every athlete in training submits himself to strict discipline, and he does it just to win a laurel wreath that will soon wither away. But we do it to win a crown that will last forever. So our crowns that Yeshua gives us are everlasting. There's a crown of rejoicing that we see in 1 Thessalonians 2:19. For when our Lord Yeshua returns, what will be our hope, our joy, our crown to boast about? Won't it be you? And this is Paul. I think it's Paul did Timothy. Whoever wrote Timothy, he is speaking to this congregation. So those we minister to are called our crown of rejoicing because we get to participate in God's work of salvation. We have the crown of righteousness, which is from 2 Timothy 4:8. All that awaits me now is the crown of righteousness which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for him to appear. Yeshua is our righteousness, but by our walk with him, he will award us that crown for our faithfulness. We have the crown of glory from 1 Peter 5:4. Then when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive glory as your unfading crown. Now, this is Peter is addressing this to the congregation leaders. He's telling them that as they faithfully lead their flocks in righteousness, as they faithfully keep his word and teach those congregants around them, that they are going to receive a crown of glory for their work, for their shepherding work to the believers. The crown of life, which we see in Revelation 2:10. Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you life as your victor's crown. Names. Now we know that names are important in the Bible. A name reflects an attribute or defines a family heritage. So here in this verse, the names that we are given by God reflect both. We have both attributes as followers of Yeshua and a family heritage as sons and daughters of God. We walk in newness of life because of the redeeming work of our Father. But not only do we carry the name of our God, the name of his kingdom, Yeshua says he's going to give us a new name as well, one that reflects who we have become, not who we have been. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. And that is it for the Church of Philadelphia. I know I didn't do this very long, but these people were really good. You know? Are there any questions? No? Okay. Oh my goodness. Is it only 11:36? Y'all, we got to talk about something. 11:37? Oh.
One thing that you mentioned, are you recording?
No.
Okay. One thing that you mentioned, and I don't know exactly how you said it now, but what popped in my mind was Lala here in town, you know, a leader in town.